marvelous post-flip podcast on all things Marvel in the Fangirl Zone. I'm Mischievous Dave.
And I'm Shawn Fangirl S. And today we're talking episode 5 of season 1 of Moon Knight, titled Asylum. Written by Danielle Amon, Doug Moench, and Don Perlin. I'm sorry if I screwed up anybody's name. And directed by Mohamed Diab.
Maybe it's Munch.
Munch? Is it Munch?
I don't know.
Oh.
I should know because he's written a lot of great stuff. So let's get into the old initial reactions. Let's get into the initial reactions. Shawn, what you think?
Oh my God, by the time this one was over, I was heartbroken.
Oh, I know.
And I'm thinking, wait, we only have one more episode?
I don't know how they're going to top this one.
My head is spinning. Like, it really is because of everything that they put in. Now, it was a great episode because they gave us so much information that I never thought we were going to find out. But it was like, holy crap. It was kind of a hard episode. I wasn't crying, but I was heartbroken by the end.
Oh, yeah. Did it bake your noodle?
You know what? There's still a lot of questions that came up, and I'm still wondering. I think it was you had sent something to us about this is really all happening in the asylum, like the whole thing, and it's in his head, and I was like, wait.
But the Hippo says he's dead, though.
It's like, yeah, that's really got me like spinning, going, oh, I don't know what to think anymore. Although they're trying to pull more threads. Talking about that plane of existence. So this should be interesting what they do with the next one.
Who's to say his ability to cope is in the asylum, or his ability to cope includes being dead, but he's not dead because the hippo is part of the whole, organizing himself and organizing principle to keep himself going. We saw him shot, so... shouldn't he be dead? The hippo says he's dead, but is the hippo part of his imagination?
Oh my gosh. We're going to go down a what if rabbit hole, but what if this and this? It's like,
It's hard to reconcile, really.
It is. That's why I'm wondering what the heck's going to happen. And is the next episode like 12 hours long? Because I don't know how they're going to put everything together.
I know. Well, people down at our local comic book shop at Wonderland Comics are saying... it's going to be 2 hours. I'm like, really? 2 hours? They've all been an hour and they managed to tell their story. I can't see 2 hours. An hour and 15 minutes like some shows do, just to fit in that extra little bomb.
Yeah. I don't know.
I loved it. I mean, I was all over the planet afterwards, simply in orbit. I calmed down. It did bake my noodle. I calmed down after watching it a second time, but I'm still giving it, even though we don't do ratings here, 5 out of 5 wiggly-eared hippos.
I love the wiggly ears.
Oh, my God. It's so funny. It's so funny. They had some jokes in there where you didn't think they could introduce some humor because there was such pathos, too. Seeing Steven... get his hero moment and then go overboard. I know I'm jumping ahead there, but I'm like, no.
It really threw me, like, how much was happening. And if you're paying attention, how many little nods to everything else is in there and how many rabbit holes to go down because of it.
I know. We could do a 2-hour show.
On Easter eggs?
Examine everything else. I am a little heartened. I actually didn't pick it up until my second watch when they were trying to send word, or they were deciding on sending word to Layla to free Khonshu. I'm like, oh, good. Because I'm hoping Layla does get to free Khonshu. And as my tinfoil theory goes, she'll free Khonshu, and Khonshu will save Mark. Or at least bring him back to life. I'm leaning more that he is dead. Okay. Actually. And that Khonshu will once again bring him back to life. But the price for helping Layla and getting Mark back to life is for her to be his avatar. He won't do it without that. And that's what he wanted anyway. And if you're wondering how Layla gets into the tomb and saves and everything, she'll do it with Yatzil's help.
Which one's that one?
She was the avatar for...
right. The one that would sing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I couldn't remember the name, sorry. All right, this should be interesting. And then there could be more than one Moon Knight anyway.
It'd be, I don't know if they haven't signed Oscar Isaac to another one, at least not that we know of at this point. So if they actually throw us a monkey wrench and make May Callum as the next Moon Knight, even if it's only for half a season, we just saw on Star Wars how a Mandalorian was actually brought back for the last 3 episodes of Boba Fett. So it can be done.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, now I'm like, But isn't that part of the whole Moon Knight mythos that there's several Moon Knights that are out there?
No, just several personalities behind Moon Knight. Just only one Moon Knight.
Oh, see, I thought Moon Knight was what Khonshu calls all of his people.
But in the comics, there's only one Moon Knight. I never heard of Ethan Hawke's character, Arthur Harrow, being a Moon Knight. In fact, he was only in the comics a tiny bit, and all of a sudden he's got this huge role. But I don't think I ever heard anything about him being a Moon Knight. It fits in with the mythos of this show that you can have multiple avatars, but that's the direction the show has taken, not necessarily the comics.
Yeah, this show is just going to knock us for a loop all the way to the end. I know that.
And it's always been Mark Spector.
Oh, okay.
But that's only the comics, though. These guys are definitely widening the path here.
Well, let's jump into our episode with our huge recap. Mark and Steven search through their memories to find the truth or become left behind. Yeah, and that's when things start going bad.
I don't know if that makes sense or nonsense. So, Mark Spector cycles through a series of fragmented memories, including a flooding cave with distant cries of help, a woman screaming with vitriol, and his first encounter with the goddess Tawaret, or Tawaret. I don't know if I like the pronunciation of the first or second. I think I like Tawaret.
I had no idea how you actually say it. So
a lot of people say Tawaret, but I kind of like Tawaret. That sounds very Egyptian. Before waking up in Dr. Harrow's office at the Putnam Medical Facility, as he finishes the sentence finally, Harrow attempts to calm down a heavily bruised Mark, telling him he did not shoot him. And I have to say, at this point, I don't think that was Mark at all. I think that was Jake Lockley. Jake Lockley always had a wounded nose or a bandaged nose. That's what he was known for, because he gets into fights. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a violent guy.
I feel like you can tell it's the different personality because of the way he, not just hearing the way he talks, but he'll talk and his lips and teeth stay really close together. It's almost like he's talking through clenched teeth.
Yep. Okay. Well, Harrow attempts to calm down a heavily bruised Mark, telling him he didn't shoot him, including the Jake Lockley face massage. Addressing his patient, Harrow tells him that Mark's mind is violently vacillating between sense and nonsense, as his brain tries to cope with a very difficult reality. He reminds Mark that he is a patient here at Putnam with fantastical delusions of being a superhero while refusing everything possible to look within himself. Retracing Mark's account, Harrow reminds him that the moments earlier, he relayed that he was in a hospital just like this, except it was in Egypt, where he was in the company of a talking rhinoceros. Wrong. Harrow was a hippopotamus. That's what's funny. He even corrects him in his delusions. Mark concedes that on the pendulum that the notion swings to the end of the nonsense. Encouraged, Harrow states that a struggling mind will often build places to seek shelter for different aspects of the self from our most traumatic memories. Treading lightly, Harrow asks to revisit the early conversation involving a little boy. Thanks to his doctor, Mark claims he is so much better as he grabs a glass pyramid off Harrow's desk. Threatened, Harrow triggers a security alarm. As Billy and Bobby arrive, Harrow doesn't want them to lose all the progress they made today, reminding him that he's not the enemy of the staff. And right then he has the staff said it's Mark from his outburst, which I still think it's Jake. Because he wanted to kill him. That's like Jake's reaction to everything. I'll kill you.
Yeah, I'm like, why is he picking up that pyramid? It's like, yeah, it's great. Everything's great. It's fine.
Nice and sharp.
Yeah, it's like, Which is one reason that I do not believe that this is a real facility. Because I'm like, why is there so many breakable things that if somebody went out of control, they can hurt themselves or the people around them? And it's
so many. He doesn't explain all his objects d'art is the Egyptology in his office. Why would he have that?
Right.
That I have to agree. That's a delusion. We've seen that set before earlier, except it was broken down museum pieces before they were crashing through a window.
And then,
gosh, I still want to know if there's something to do with the water that Mark fell into. Something puts you in some type of netherworld or something. Does there have to have a healing quality to it?
I mean, it is really odd that there's just random water in this, so it's got to be something, right? They're not just going to leave us hanging, or are they?
Oh, God. Well, they do. I hope it has something to do with Layla being the next Moon Knight, even if it's just for 2 or 3 episodes.
Maybe it's a portal. Who knows? But the fact that they're like, Putnam, you're in Putnam in Chicago. And I'm like, what does Chicago have to do with it? Because I didn't think he was from that area.
Mark is.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought Mark was supposed to be from New York, like upstate New York.
Well, Jake is the New York cabbie.
Right. And then we have Steven, who's from the UK.
Yeah,
and
apparently.
Then I'm like, I don't know where. I mean, we're not, picking someplace specific. And then Mark's he's supposed to be from Chicago?
Yeah. Yep, that's where he grew up. That's the cityscape with his Jewish family there. That's Chicago. Pretty sure.
I don't know where in Chicago that is, but okay, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because I don't know where any random little caves like that are either. Just saying. I'm in the area. But let's keep going. Back in the Egyptian mental hospital. I'm sorry, I'm just saying it that way sounds weird. Tauret informs both Mark and Steven that they are indeed quite dead. Wow, thanks for laying that on me. But remarking that it's been some time since any souls arrived here, Tauret tells them that they're in the realm of the dust. Or, I'm sorry, the realm of the duat. I don't know why I said dust. It was all dusty.
I wonder why they haven't had any souls there. People die, right? They're just not entering the duat or Egyptian.
That's what I'm thinking, because maybe, nobody is worshiping them, and the fact that they died, however you want to look at it, in the tomb.
That's good.
That's why she's up.
Okay.
Stephen interjects, delighted and in awe. Okay, Stephen, you need to calm down. That's what I'm going to say right now. A little too excited to be like, oh my God, we're in the dead place, and they're going to, oh my God, look at it. Calm down.
For an autograph.
Right? They're in
the hieroglyphics.
That would be hilarious. Here, let me sign this. I'll sign it on your heart. They're in the presence of the goddess of women and children, who is guiding them on their journey in the afterlife through the Egyptian underworld. And the fact that he said that she's the goddess of women and children kind of had me questioning things also. Because why is she there?
Well, Egyptian mythology, you can be that, and then another pharaoh will come along, or another age, and they'll change you to something else. And they just add on to the mythology until that file cabinet is stuffed with all their abilities. I'm not kidding.
Okay. Because I was thinking it was said for a reason.
Well, it could be. Yeah, but still.
I mean, because of what we see, that's why I'm like, is that why she was there? The goddess of children kind of thing. Why?
What rabbit hole is that? Because we see children later in the the episode?
Yeah, and we see what started a lot of this.
Okay.
So that's what I'm thinking. But, like I said, rabbit holes abound. So let's talk about Mark being just Mark. I don't know how else to say it. He is filled with nothing but disdain and refuses to believe that this is the afterlife. Of course.
He can create multiple personalities, but he can't believe in the afterlife.
Right. You are like Avatar for an Egyptian god, but no, this is the step too far. Come on. But Tarwat corrected him and then is like, hey, no. This is just an afterlife, not the afterlife. And I don't know for why this was happening, but I was getting a weird Miss Minutes feel too, by the way. It's like, no. But there's many intersectional planes of the untethered consciousness that exists throughout the world. Like the ancestral plane, which like I said, pull that thread to put it with Black Panther. It's like, okay, where he got to see his family. Interesting. The true nature of the duat. Oh, what?
I was just going to say, can you imagine if you get to pick your own ancestral plane or afterlife to go to? Like, wait a minute, what is my favorite afterlife? That kind of freaks me out that there's more than one, let's say, heaven. Mm-hmm. And at the end of, the book in the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, there was 3 more books after that, and it ended with 3001. The last paragraph, and I'm going to spoil it. Okay, spoilers for 3001: A Space Odyssey. Some of the beings that left all those black, they're not obelisks. What's
monoliths?
Yeah, monoliths behind, are talking amongst themselves, and they're observing what just happened, and Europa becoming a planet, and Jupiter becoming a sun, and bringing whole new life. And what they discuss is, well, give them time. Their God is young, and they need to learn. I'm like, their God is young? Are you kidding me? There are other gods, too? Even, that just blew me away. Blew me away. Their God is young. God, what is he, a teenager?
Like Baby Yoda, compared to the others. You never know. Age is slow. We do get to find out a little bit about the duat, which I thought was interesting because it's impossible for the human mind to comprehend. So they may perceive the realm as something easily recognizable, hence a psychiatric facility. I don't want my afterlife to look like a psychiatric facility. Don't know about you.
I'd rather be on the sandboat.
Right? Mark, of course, is like, no, that's because we're insane. That's why we're here in a facility. And that kind of deflates Steven's sails a bit. But he's frustrated, and his reality now involves a talking hippo and a talking dead bird and Steven outside his body, and now the afterlife. So obviously Dr. Harrow is right. When he said that, I was like, no. No, Harrow is not right. Harrow is the madman here.
It depends which way you want to go. Are they dead, or are they actually insane and in a hospital? Oh. Mark was told he was dead, but he still believes he's just insane and hallucinating this. So what do you believe?
I think that they're dead.
Okay.
But Mark believes he's at Putnam, so Mark's like, you know what? And right over through these doors, we're just going to find the common room and blah, blah, blah. And he walks through, and nope, he is on the deck of Tarat's massive boat, and they're navigating through the underworld desert. It's like, oh, okay, you are literally sailing a ship through sand. This is weird. And then she's talking all sweet and just plucks their hearts right out of their chest. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, this is getting freaky. And she places them on the scales of justice, where they're going to be weighed against the feather of truth. In weighing the heart, the ancient Egyptians believed that the heart represented who they really were in life. So I'm assuming this is supposed to be similar to what Harrow is doing, only, I guess, more for us to see. And if by the end of their journey the scales are balanced, their souls will be welcomed into Araru, or the Field of Reeds, which doesn't sound very awesome to me, but hey.
I know, the wheat field. You get to walk on a...
Right, we're like, in a whole different world than what it was when the Egyptian gods rule, so that makes more sense then. They'll be able to spend their eternity in paradise, which, again, not so much for me, but sure, why not?
Where is everybody?
They're chilling in their own paradise, in their own wheat field.
Field of Reeds, all alone.
That doesn't sound fun either.
No.
However, if the scales are not balanced, and this was very dramatic, you'll be thrown overboard, where the dead will drag you down into the duat, where you'll remain forever frozen in the sand. Yikes.
Yeah.
So, speaking privately to Stephen, Mark refuses to go to the duat or to the Field of Reeds. He proposes they kill the hippo and steal our boat. Wait, what?
Let's kill the hippo.
However, their conversation is interrupted by Tarawat as she notices the scales are swaying wildly side to side. Holding their hearts in her palm, she notices that neither heart is full, and each one feels incomplete. Now, I personally was thinking at this point is when we're going to get the third personality, because it's like, oh, it's not full, but there's someone else, so that's what I thought they had to go look for.
Yeah, me too.
She regretfully states that without balanced scales, the duet will eventually claim their souls, whether you're supposed to be balanced or not. So, you got to figure this out, guys. I'm rooting for you, she tells Mark and Steven, as the boat that contains all their life's memories is simply through the door for the hallways, and all the doors in the hallways, and hey guys, get on it. It's like, I felt like we were going to have a Scooby-Doo moment where you're going to like going in and out a bunch of doors. But, you know, she doesn't know what they're hiding, but recommends head on in there and figure it out. Reveal the truth to one another so you can balance your scales before we arrive at the field of reeds. Otherwise, souls are destroyed. So, TikTok.
Oh, no. It was funny, though, when she pulled out the hearts. A little bit of humor. She goes, I did it! And you guys are still here?
Oh, my gosh. I'm thinking, wait, what?
She hasn't done it in a while.
You're going to, like, make them explode or something? That would have been really bad.
Anyway, back on the boat, Mark still thinks his plan to commandeer Tawarat's boat is better than overcoming their past blockages. Blockages? Ignoring Mark, Steven approaches one door which shows the moment he allowed Mark as Moon Knight to take over the body to handle the Jackal Harrow. The Jackal Harrow released in the museum, as seen in episode 1, The Goldfish Problem. Moving to another doorway, Steven recalls the recent evening where he, as Mr. Knight, and Khonshu cycled across 1,000 Egyptian nights to find a specific location of stars in the sky, as seen in episode 3, The Friendly Type. Peering through another doorway, Steven comes across one of Mark's memories. However, Mark refuses to revisit every single memory he's ever had. Suddenly, Mark and Steven hear a distant cry for help from a child's voice. Steven takes off running down the hall as Mark follows him. They enter a cafeteria filled with dead bodies as Steven spies their scales violently sway back and forth. As Mark navigates the room, he recalls where he encountered each person in life. Steven is aghast that Mark had killed every single person present and remembers them. Mark explains that each of the bodies there belonged to a criminal, murderers, predators, the worst of the worst. Khonshu wanted all these individuals punished, but that doesn't mean that it didn't weigh on him of taking a person's life. Makes sense. With that admission, Steven notices the scales are slowing down, acknowledging the hidden parts of their past is working. Suddenly, in the corner of the room, Steven spots a little boy and is upset there would be a child in a room full of people Mark killed. Mortified, Mark begs Steven not to go near him. Ignoring Mark, Steven runs after the scared kid through another doorway. Steven locks in the door, preventing Mark from following them. You know, there's a lot of people thinking out there that Bushman is there. Bushman might be the third violent category. I don't think so, or personality. If Bushman was a part of that personality, wouldn't his dead be in that cap, the cap of the dead too? I mean, it'd be a real shocker if Layla's father was in there. And since he's not in there, I guess
then he didn't feel that he did it.
Yeah. At least that's my thinking anyway.
Although he did mention New York twice, which is why people were saying that they thought the third personality came from somebody he did kill. That he
if you notice in the background, there's always a cab going by in the background.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. Well, this has got to be Jake. There's another taxi.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, and this is where things start going pear-shaped pretty fast. Taking in the new memories, Steven suddenly spots his mom, Wendy, barbecuing outside as his father, Elias, builds a child-sized playhome. The young child Steven followed is Randall, who their mom adoringly refers to as Roro. Young Mark appears and makes fun of Randall's drawing of a goldfish with only one fin. I thought it was Nemo. But Wendy chides the young Mark for teasing his younger brother. Steven's bewildered because he doesn't have a younger brother. Young Mark asks Randall to explore the cave with him before dinner, and Wendy and Elias allows their sons to go play, but remind them to watch for each other, and Mark, watch over your younger brother. Young Mark and Randall walk through the woods, reenacting a scene from Tomb Buster, with Mark portraying Dr. Stephen Grant, and Randall as Grant's ward. Stephen's trailing behind them, completely perplexed by the mention of Dr. Grant. Maybe because he didn't make himself as a doctor? I don't know. As they approach the entrance of the cave, the weather changes and it starts to pour. Worried, Randall reminds Mark that Mom said we're not supposed to go in there when it's raining, but Mark dismisses it and says, we'll be fine. And, right when that happened, it's like, oh, no. I don't know about you, but I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it.
You start knocking on every piece of wood.
Right? Stephen follows the two young brothers into the cave, growing concerned as the heavy downpour begins to flood the interior of the cave. He calls after the lads, hoping to draw them out before anything bad happens. It's a memory, Stephen. It's not going to help. Distressed with the water levels, I was distressed with how close everything was. I'm like, I can't breathe in here. I'm not even the one in there. Stephen can hear the distant cries of Mark and Randall as they get caught in the flash flood in the cave. Meanwhile, Mark paces the hallway trying to find another entrance to the memory Stephen stumbled upon.
It's funny you mentioned the cave, and it's just a memory, but he's part of the memory, and he's yelling, and I go, how can they hear him if it's a memory, or how can they hear him if he's just a figment of somebody else's imagination, too? Yet he's experiencing everything that the two kids are experiencing, too, the high water, etc. Mm-hmm. Well,
because he was there, even if he wasn't in the forefront?
Yeah, that's even as Mark, he was there.
Mm-hmm. Where were we? No. Was it Stephen or Mark? I'm like, which one
Mark
finds the mother?
Always trying to find another entrance to the memory Stephen stumbled upon.
Okay, and he's startled when he sees his mother staring coldly at him through one of the doorways. That was like, oh, okay, this is going to go bad really fast. That's what I was thinking. Overwhelmed by Stephen's voice and the cries of his younger brother Randall, Mark closes his eyes, reminding himself that it's just a memory. A different doorway opens for Mark, allowing him to re-enter his childhood home as his family holds a shiva for his brother Randall. As he approaches his parents, he sees Stephen across the room, soaking wet and despondent. It's like, well, I guess that's going to just linger for a while. Mark and Stephen witness Wendy telling Elias that she just wants her Roro back. However, she snaps when she spies a young Mark coming down the stairs, berating him for not keeping his younger brother safe. Mark pleads with Stephen for them to leave this memory, as Stephen's horrified to see his mother blaming the death of Randall on young Mark. I'm like, I think I was pretty much in the same boat as Mark. I'm like, you should leave now. Just go. Don't follow this, because this is bad. Just go.
Stephen has to know.
Upset, the young Mark rushes back upstairs as Stephen chases after him. And I don't know about you, but again, I'm like, don't do it. No, it's like I'm watching a horror movie. On the next floor, Stephen witnesses another memory of Elias begging his wife to come out and celebrate their young son, Mark's birthday. Making the excuse for Wendy, Elias tells young Mark that his mom isn't feeling so well, so they'll just celebrate this year with just the two of them. I was really starting to, feel the pangs in my chest. I'm like, oh, this is hard. Because we see Mark solemnly blow out his 8 birthday candles. Following the young Mark up the stairs again on the next level, Stephen witnesses another birthday, and Elias enthusiastically makes Mark's favorite cake for his 12th birthday, even if it didn't look super pretty. However, the drunk Wendy saunters over to the dining room table and berates Mark, believing that he was always jealous of his younger brother ever since he was born, and that she should have known that he would do something like that. I was like, oh, ouch, damn.
Ouch, yeah.
Yeah, this, really, I'm like, and they're twisting the knife in her heart. Thank you. Mm. Young Mark, upset, leaves the dining room and runs up to the bedroom. Stephen doesn't understand why his mom would behave this way. Now, I could get that she's upset, and it's so many years later, though, it's like, okay, she's still blaming him. This is really bad, and it's obviously something more than just grief.
Yeah.
But when...
It broke her.
Yeah, but when all of this is happening, you kind of at the same time feel like, Why wasn't Dad stepping in? Because it couldn't all be like when he was away. That's what I was thinking, but obviously there's other things I'm sure that were happening.
I think Mark somewhere blames his father for being too weak about it.
Probably. I think that's why a lot of this probably came up, and maybe that's why Jake ended up getting manifested. I was like trying to find the right word. Right when Steven's about to enter young Mark's bedroom, Mark pulls them both back out on the street, and it's like, no, you don't want to go in there. Steven's pretty upset that Mark would remember their mother this way, because that's nothing like her. Oh, God. Please, Steven, no. Don't dig in this anymore. He demands they go back in and find out what's happening in that bedroom, but they're interrupted as another memory pours out onto the neighborhood street. Young Mark storming off with a duffel bag as Elias pleads with his son to come back inside. He can't lose another son. Elias promises that Wendy will get the help that she needs and we can fix this. And that's when a heartbroken Mark snaps that he was supposed to fix this and doesn't understand why his father hasn't yet.
Yeah.
And again, ouch.
And that's when the taxi cruises by in the background, too.
Okay. Now I'm going to have to watch it again to see all the taxis again.
Yeah. As Mark tackles Steven from re-entering their childhood home, the scuffle lands them in another memory in the Egyptian desert. Steven takes in the aftermath of a massacre at a dig site, recalling... I meant to mention to you, Shawn, that
yes.
We should mention, in the comics, it's the father that dies and not the mother.
Oh.
Yeah. It's actually his father got mixed up with the wrong people, too, and a lot of Mark's trauma comes from his father's death. But that was the comics, not the TV shows, so they flipped that, too. Well, anyway, Steven takes in the aftermath of a dig site, and recalling how Howard telling that Mark was a mercenary, killing hostages. Mark is stung that Steven would believe such a thing. Mark reveals that going AWOL, you're in a fugue state, gets you discharged from the military. I bet it does. The few options for work, he went on a work for hire with his former commanding officer, Bushman. The job was to raid an Egyptian tomb, but Bushman changed the plan and called for no witnesses, just as Steven discovers the body of Layla's father, Dr. Abdullah Al-Fawli. Unable to live with his partner's plan, Mark remorsefully recollects that he tried to get all the hostages away, but they didn't make it, himself included. Mark and Steven spot a mortally wounded younger Mark in the distance crawling into Khonshu's temple. Just as he was about to put himself out of his misery, Khonshu's disembodied voice offers the younger Mark a proposition. Khonshu reveals he can feel the pain, fractured mind within him. Instead of wasting his life, the stone statue reveals him to be the god Khonshu, in need of a warrior. And he asks Mark, will be in his hands, his eyes, and his vengeance. If the younger Mark chooses life instead of death, he will be bound to Khonshu, swearing to protect travelers of the night and bringing his vengeance to evildoers who would do him harm. I still want to know how Harold... I wonder if he's just plain lying about that, but he does seem to anticipate what Khonshu always says. I don't know. Unless he's an avatar for somebody else, or he's just Bushman. I don't know. Now I'm going to go down a rabbit hole, so forget it. Mark looks back on the memory with a combination of disdain and gratitude for another shot at life. Steven views the scenario differently, that a sneaky old vulture has been manipulating and taking advantage of Mark since the very beginning. Steven spots the scales again, seeing it slow down further, as Mark believes Khonshu's offer stopped him from being what he's always been, a killer. With his final moments nearing, the younger Mark agrees to an exchange and promises his servitude to Khonshu. Soon he's imbued with Khonshu's light and protected by the healing ceremonial Moon Knight armor. Mark and Steven are pulled from the memory once more from a disturbance caused by baboons, creatures of the ancient Egyptians viewed as the dead who oversaw the duat. Returning onto the deck of the boat, I hear a baboon now. Tarwet tells Mark and Steven that fear is spreading in the underworld because unbalanced souls and the heads of the living are being judged and condemned to the sands before their time. An evil act of Haro's doing, at best.
That was looking crazy. All of a sudden, I'm like, why does it look like, a meteor shower?
I know, souls. And even it kind of freaked out Tarwet, too. What the hell?
Right?
Steven begs Tarwet to help them go back, even if she could return them, they'd just be returning to a body with a bullet in it without the ability to heal. Damn. Steven begs Tarwet to get a message to Layla to free Khonshu, which helps my theory a lot. I hope she does.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. free Khonshu. Khonshu makes the deal with Layla, and then Mark comes back.
Well, we keep seeing that scarab everywhere. It's like, what is that? What's going to happen with that?
I don't know. Well, in Egypt, you're going to see a scarab everywhere, including every souvenir shop.
True.
Oh, I'm kidding. She doesn't understand why he would want to be with Khonshu again when Mark looks like he was really wanted to get away from him. Conceding, Mark admits that he did, but this was their only option now. Throwing caution to the wind and noting that Osiris will not be pleased, Tara turns her boat around, noting that Osiris's gate is the only path back. I want to see Osiris, by the way.
I'm hoping that they're not going to, like, suddenly turn Taweret into a little, stone statue now.
Oh, God. As she does this, she urges Mark and Steven to go back inside the boat. They don't have much time to get their scales balanced. Yeah, return to your undead hallucination.
Oh, man.
Whichever it is. Steven demands to go back into the house to Mark's childhood bedroom, believing that's the key. Mark doesn't think they need to go back to the memories all over again. They can just talk. Yeah, let's talk it out. He pleads to Steven to not make it go through it all again, and it's not worth it. Steven responds with incredulity. Towards that statement, they're about to lose everything. If we don't get back and Harold succeeds, all these people will die. If Layla dies, that's on your head. It'll be your fault. Losing it, Mark shouts at Steven that he won't do it as he begins to slip into a narcissistic rage episode.
I was freaking out when he starts doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, what does this mean? But we don't really get to see that too much because all of a sudden we're back in Haro's office and Haro tells Mark to stop your self-injurious rage. As Mark gets his bearings, Haro laughs off the notion, telling Mark he watches way too many movies and they can't involuntarily sedate their patients. Haro lathers praise onto Mark, though, stating that he's so proud of him for tackling the traumas of his past over the last few hours. And again, we're all thinking, wait a minute, what? It's not easy peering inward into all of those moments that make you, you. And I was scratching my head at this point. But with this progress, Haro poses a question. Does Mark think he created Steven to hide from all the awful things he's done in life? Or does he think Steven created Mark to punish the world for what his mother did to him? Well, there's something interesting.
He's really playing with him now.
Right? And if this is all in his self-conscious, he's really screwing with himself. So that's like, wait, what? To know for certain, Haro advises Mark to open up to Steven in his childhood bedroom. I was not looking forward to this moment. Young Mark pushes all of his Tomb Buster toys off the desk, and Steven tells Mark he remembers the bedroom, but he doesn't remember this memory. And a terrified Mark, a young Mark, hides in the corner pleading out loud, "It's not my mom, it's not my mom," as Wendy pounds on the bedroom door demanding to be let in. As young Mark's eyes roll back in his head and young Steven takes over the body. I was like, oh God, no, it started that long ago.
I'm not sure how that works. Shouldn't it Steven be remembering that? And Mark remembering that and Steven takes over afterwards so he doesn't have to deal with it? Because
that would make more sense.
If Steven, got the brunt of the beating, shouldn't he remember that?
Yeah, because he was created to not remember that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think it was the other way around. That did seem kind of strange. But our young Steven notices that the Tomb Buster poster is hanging on the wall, and when danger is near, Steven Grant has no fear. And that's when our older version of Steven realizes that Mark made him up. And of course we hear, oh no, Mom's going to be so mad, as he starts picking up all this stuff around the room. And that's when the moment is interrupted by Wendy, like busting the door down, basically. Grabbing a belt off the wall, Wendy threatens the young Mark and says, "You're going to listen when I tell you something." And I was like, oh crap. Before Steven could witness any more of the memory, Mark pulls him from the room so he doesn't have to see his mom, their mom, beating the young Mark. And Mark sharply states that Steven wasn't meant to see that. That's the whole point of you. In reaction, Steven punches Mark in the face. It's like, what? Because he's upset that he was just made to be Mark's stress ball. You were supposed to see the good in everything and not see the bad. So I think there was a good reason. But all this time, Steven thought he was the original, which of course they all do, right?
That was a little heartbreaking.
Every movie ever where you had somebody who has multiple personalities, they all think that they're the original, right? Frustrated with everything, Mark explains Steven got to live a happy, simple, normal life thanks to him. And who cares if it's a lie? Why would anyone want to live the truth that he had a mother that beat him, that hated him, that made his life a living hell? And his dad didn't do much to stop anything. Mark assured Steven that you got to live the life with the kind of mother who loves you and is still alive. And when he said that, in my head, I had a record scratch. It's like, wait, what? Steven believes Mark's just trying to hurt him with the revisionist history of their mother. But elaborating further, Mark reveals that his dad called him after all these years, letting him know about his mom's Shiva. But he just couldn't bring himself to go. Steven shuts down and demands to be let out. Suddenly, back in Dr. Harrow's office, Steven is rattled by the latest revelation and Harrow's presence, questioning the environment, wondering if it's all a test. Harrow tells Steven, "It's good to see you again. I was worried I'd never speak to you again." And I was creeping out with that. I don't know about you. Harrow apologizes, revealing that it was him that told Mark to open up to Steven. And how did that conversation go exactly? Not well, obviously. Harrow reminds him that when Steven first arrived at Putnam, that he didn't think Steven would ever be able to acknowledge Mark. And it was Steven who brought them there in the first place after his mother passed. What? Steven's like, wait, what? And he was freaking out because he's like, she's not dead. Of course, calming Steven down, Harrow asks, well, would you like to speak with her? I'll ring her on the phone. And Steven is immediately like, no, she doesn't want to talk on the phone. She doesn't like that. Don't bother her. And it was getting a little bit more and more hurried the way he was talking. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly Harrow hands him the phone. It's like, would you like to speak to your mother? And Steven starts hesitantly approaching the phone as tears are coming down his face. And it's like he doesn't even realize he's crying. Holding the phone receiver, Steven acknowledges that his mom is dead. And I was like, oh, damn. I just felt like that was so bad, the way they introduced that. Mm-hmm. And there's
a lot of gut punches in this episode.
It was. That's why I said this was a wowzer. It's like, I may not have cried, but wow, that was like, I needed to like watch puppy stuff afterwards to bring myself.
Kitten videos.
Yeah. Like, let me see these cute little puppies wiggling their butts. I don't know. But we get to revisit that first memory that appeared in the doorway, which was Elias holding a Shiva for late Wendy Spector in their home. When he spots his adult grieving son, Mark, out of the windows as he's standing across the street drinking from a flask. Elias motions for Mark to come inside, but he doesn't, and he starts walking away. He doesn't want to give his mother the satisfaction. Steven witnesses the younger Mark, distraught by the matter, falling to his knees in the middle of the street. I wouldn't exactly say younger Mark, because I think it was supposed to be within the year. Steven then sees himself take control of the body in a fugue state, which I'm guessing this goes back to when he went AWOL. Possibly, who knows. Unsure of where he is, the memory Steven rings his mother, amused that he's once again lost, unsure of exactly how he ended up where he is. Oh, that was sad too. Mark appears sharing that this moment was 2 months ago. It was their mother's death and the Shiva that let their lives bleed into one another. Mark regretfully admits he couldn't face their dad after living with everything that he's done. Steven reminds Mark that all the horrible things their mother said to him was wrong and none of it was your fault. Yeah, but childhood trauma. I think we were talking about that off script. Through the pain and tears, Mark believes that it is his fault and he shouldn't have brought his younger brother, Randall, to the caves. Of course, gently, because Steven is our gentle, honest one. He's reassuring Mark that you're just a kid and it's not your fault. The moment is once again interrupted as Tarot's boat stops in its voyage. The guys rush back onto deck and they find the gates of Osiris. But Tarot regretfully informs them that the gates aren't open because the scales never balanced. I thought she was really surprised that the gates weren't opened anyway.
Yeah.
So the journey has come to an end, and I can't stop the inevitable. The unbalanced souls of the Duat will now claim your souls. Yeah, that's dramatic.
Mm.
And we have armed, unfriendly souls beginning to overtake the boat. As Mark tells Steven to hide, I'll handle it. Where's he going? That's what I want to know.
Where's Steven going?
Yeah, where's he going to go hide?
Let him go back in the institution. The asylum, I guess.
Honestly, I thought he was going to go in and open that other sarcophagus. So it's like, okay, 3 against 1, let's go.
Yeah.
With the sudden epiphany, Steven realizes that if he's Mark, then that means this has got to go a little differently. I don't know. Because if Mark goes overboard, doesn't Steven go overboard? Steven suddenly charges at the dead, dragging Mark, and impresses his other half as he eliminates the threat. However, there's another unbalanced soul nearly pulling Mark overboard. Steven rushes to the boat's side, removing the soul's grip on Mark. And to Mark's horror, Steven ends up going overboard with said unbalanced soul. As Steven tries to run after the sailing boat, he succumbs to the nature of the Duat and is frozen in the sand. This was so hard. With Steven's sacrifice, Tarwat discovers that Mark and Steven's hearts have finally balanced on the scales. Mark suddenly finds himself in the field of reeds. And that's where my questions were like, hold on a second. How is he balanced if Steven's the one that went over? Because
he doesn't have to deal with any more unbalance from Steven.
Yeah, but Steven was the one who was like the nice, happy, go lucky, not the guy killing people, you know?
Yeah, but that's the denial. He was the avatar of denial, though, which is wrong. He was out of balance because there was no Steven. Steven was not the truth and didn't deal with the truth at all. He was just a recreation of guilty Mark.
Okay.
I mean, the whole thing was a gut punch. No one, fake Steven, never real Steven, was overboard. I kind of hope they find a way to bring him back, even though that means unbalanced, I guess. But it's such a great character. I mean, like, that was devastating. And Mark in the field of reeds, like...
Yeah, that was like, what? I was just confused, and it's like, wait a minute, how's he there, though? Because he doesn't exactly have a light heart.
Well,
and then if you still got that third one somewhere, it's like, what?
Hopefully Khonshu's going to appear before him after Layla manages to get him out and becomes Khonshu's avatar after all. I don't know. Wow.
There's so much for one episode. I don't know how they're going to do it.
If you were rating this one, Shawn, what would you rate it? And you can just do a numerical one. You don't have to be silly like me. Would you give it a 3, 4, or 5 out of 5?
I would definitely say it's 5 swinging scales, but
yeah.
And I have to say the scales, honestly, because it was so up and down. Like, that was my emotions through this whole thing too.
Yeah, really.
They were swinging about as hard as those hearts were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, in the previous episode when they're running up and down the hallway and the lights are swinging back and forth, and I'm like, oh, that's the scales. It has to be.
I didn't even think of that. It probably was.
Yeah. Kind of an Easter egg. Would you want to hear more Easter eggs, young lady?
Let's hear all the Easter eggs.
Okay. So let's go back to the Putnam Medical Facility. At the beginning of the episode, we found out that Mark's breakout moment at the end of episode 4 was another delusion, except it wasn't really. Is he, and he's actually still in Dr. Harrow's office. Oh, that's a real brain pretzel. That's when Harold tries to ground Mark by saying that he's not talking to a giant hippo. He's actually at the Putnam Medical Facility. That's more or less the same name that writer Jeff Lemire used when he retold the Moon Knight origin back in 2017. That was a real famous issue run. But he's an unreliable witness, Harrow. You know, you can't trust him. You don't even know if that's real or not. I'm still wondering. And that means he's not dead, but even though he's been shot, so he should be dead. Which is real? Which is the reality? Is Mark's role in the afterlife the field of reeds, or is he really in that? And he can't be in that facility because he's dead.
It's like turning of the screw, where you don't have a reliable source talking.
Right.
Interesting.
Speaking of the ancestral plane, back in Mark's Delusion Afterlife adventure, that very much there hit goddess named Tavoret explains that our hero is very much dead. There you go. Is she a reliable witness? He's making his way through the afterlife as represented in ancient Egyptian mythology, and this holding place can take the form of many different locations. That's cool. Of course, she'd never seen it depicted as a mental hospital before, but there we are. So she says the mental hospital is just a delusion. But how can it be a delusion? Well, I guess it's only a delusion if that's the way you enter the afterlife.
I mean, you take in what you have in you, right? So
yeah, I guess.
He's believing
so this
that...
is all Mark's projection.
Yeah.
She also says that there are many different in-between places for souls and that the ancestral plane is just gorgeous. She's right because we've seen it before. And the ancestral plane in the realm of the Black Panther travels to in order to communicate with their ancestors. There's also one of the very few explicit connections to other Marvel Cinematic Universe properties that we've seen so far, following the GRC banner on the other side of a bus and the offhand mention of Madripoor. So, yeah, some little links here and there.
It's taken a while, but we're getting some.
Yeah, tangential links. This is not, it's not like you see Captain America's shield spin in front of you. But you do see it on the trailer for Doctor Strange.
That's coming soon.
Actually, it's not Captain America's shield. If you look closely, it's
Captain Britain.
Yeah. Is her name Captain Britain?
Oh, you know what? No, I don't think it's Captain Britain.
No. Oh, our listeners going to kill us. But that's her shield, though. Because even somebody who looks at it goes, well, that's cool. And
yeah, that's from What If.
Yeah, it's got the Union Jack in the middle of the shield. Anyway, we finally get to see Mark Spector's origin story along with Stephen Grant's and Moon Knight's. Mark's childhood as depicted on the show is drastically changed from the comics. Yep. On the show, preteen Mark, his even younger brother, got trapped in the cave as it was flooding. Mark's brother died, and his mother never forgave him. She became neglectful, and later abusive towards Mark so much that he created Stephen in the image of Tomb Buster hero Stephen Grant as an escape. In the comics, Mark's younger brother did not die, and neither of his parents abused him. Instead, his traumatic incident came when he discovered that his family friend was actually a Nazi deserter and a serial killer. Oh, that's right. I remember that now.
That's not better.
Yeah, I know. When teen Mark stumbled across his uncle's murder den, he was instantly traumatized and created Stephen Grant to deal with. Which one do you prefer? That origin or I kind of like the TV one better, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'd want to have a kid stumble across a murder den. I mean, not that having the younger brother, die and the whole mother go nuts is a good thing either, but holy cow.
I know. Talk about out of balance.
Right?
His brother also grew up to be an adult, and he had even worse mental health problems. Yeah, no, really? Randall eventually became convinced that he was Khonshu's avatar and took on the name Shadow Knight. He then went on a killing spree and had to be stopped, i.e. killed, by his brother Moon Knight. Wow. Yeah, this is why you don't read comics just before you go to bed. While there are very few similarities between TV's Mark and the comic Mark's childhoods, there are tons of visual references to Greg Smallwood's artwork in the form of the Moon Knight story from 2017. For example, his childhood bedroom has the same Star Wars poster and a race bed. I didn't have a race bed. I wish I did.
I never had one, but they were cool.
Yeah, no, I think I probably would have preferred a spaceship bed, but I didn't get one of those either. Kid Mark wears the same jacket in the comics as he does on the show. And even adult Mark's rebirth as Moon Knight at the foot of Khonshu statue has the same vibe, and Oscar Isaac's even dressed it a bit like Mark from the comics with the short sleeves and a scarf. Why not? We finally get a little bit about Bushman, although we have never seen him. In order to balance their scales and prevent themselves from entering into eternal torment, Mark tells Stephen everything. That includes his history as a mercenary. We've known this as Mark's gig for a while now, but it's taken until this episode for him to mention the name of the guy he worked for, Bushman. So this is interesting. In the comics, Bushman is the Bushman, as in a Bushman, as in a man from the wilderness of Australia or New Zealand. The way Mark pronounces it, though, as if the surname was like Goldman or Rushman or Hoffman. Yeah, that's not confusing. In the comics, Bushman's real name is Raoul Bushman, but Bushman wasn't revealed as his last name until 2006. The character debuted in Moon Knight #1 in 1980, so he existed for 26 years, known primarily as Bushman. kind of like read like Batman.
That's a really long walk for that character. That's all I'm saying.
I know. So as far as that Tomb Buster poster is concerned, you better believe that Mark Spector, the world's #1 and possibly only Tomb Buster superfan, has a poster from his film hanging in his bedroom. And I think that movie is kind of cheesy. Then again, when I was that age, I watched the cheesiest things and thought it was the greatest things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, most of the names in the poster don't seem to have any immediately clear connection to Moon Knight. One does, Doug Perlin. That's the name given to the fictional actor who plays Stephen Grant in the fictional film. Wait till Doug finds out he's fictional. Moon Knight was created by Doug Wonick and Doug Perlin. Another fun Easter egg is the Tomb Buster at a Timely Atlas Studios feature film. Timely and Atlas were the two names Marvel Comics went by before Marvel in the early 1960s.
Really?
They'll find anything to stick in there.
That's interesting, though, because that is not something I would have ever, tried to find, because I wouldn't have thought anything.
Oh, God, no.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff.
And again, one episode. I don't know how it's coming together.
Oh, God. I can hardly wait, but gosh, I can't. I just want to see my theory come true. But that would have nothing to do with the comics of having Layla or Mark's wife, who's also been changed in the series, turn into Moon Knight. But I'd love to see it. Love it.
I want that other person who was on his phone to pop up and, I don't know, help him somehow. I can't remember the name.
You mean like Jake or?
No, remember the first episode when he finds the cell phone and as he's scrolling, it's all Layla and then there's one other name?
Oh, right. Yeah, right.
So maybe I can't remember the name.
Another clever mention and we'll never see it.
Because that's a character I know from the comics. I just can't remember the name. Yeah. So much happening.
Too bad he wasn't in the Institute. Was he?
Oh, there was a lot of people there. We don't know. Yeah. We don't know. All right. This is crazy. I don't know how you all feel. You know how we feel about this. But we want to know your thoughts on each and every episode of this show and all of our other shows. Our deadline for feedback is 6 p.m. Eastern every Friday during the season. You can send your feedback, be it email or audio, to contact us at fangirlzone.com. And even if you send us something after the season's over, we do read it or listen to it, and we will reply to you. Because there's stuff that, you guys might catch that we don't. So bring it on.
Bring it on. Please review and rate us on iTunes and any other platform you use for your podcast with good ratings and reviews. It helps other fans of the show find us, as there are plenty of other Marvel podcasts out there. Tell your friends, and I hope you're enjoying our podcast. And don't forget to check out the other great Fangirl Zone podcasts. I was going to say, there may be plenty of them out there, but I only listen to ours.
There's only one called the Marvelous Post-Blip Podcast.
Yeah.
So don't forget to check out www.fangirlzone.com. You can find our contacts page with the other ways to get a hold of us. Send us everything. Check out everything we got out there. There's so many awesome podcasts. There's something probably for all of your tastes. And for this episode of the Marvelous Post-Blip Podcast, I am Shawn Fangirl S, and I don't know how my scales would actually end up.
And this is Mischievous Dave, and my closing is inspired to something that happened to me this week. Not necessarily to me, but I'll just go say it this way. This is Mischievous Dave. My fly may be down, but I am so up about this show.
There is nothing wrong with your internet. Do not attempt to adjust your settings. We are controlling the podcast. We control the squealing and the screams. We can make your heart flutter, your eyes blur from tears, or sharpen your mind to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit back. We are in control of what you hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your settings. You are about to experience the awe and mystery known as the female mind. You are now entering the